Hello students, welcome to the channel. In this video, we'll look at the second passage of the reading section of May 2021 US SAT. This is the history passage. This passage is adapted from Pope Leo XIII, Rerum Novarum, originally published in 1891. It has come to pass that working men have been surrendered, isolated, and helpless to the hard-heartedness of employers and the greed of unchecked competition. The mischief has been increased by rapacious usury, and usury, the passage tells us, is the lending of money at excessively high interest rates, which, although more than once condemned by the church, is nevertheless under a different guise, but with like injustice still practiced by covetous and grasping men. To this must be added that the hiring of labor and the conduct of trade are concentrated in the hands of comparatively few, so that a small number of very rich men have been able to lay upon the teeming masses of the laboring poor a yoke little better than that of slavery itself. So this passage establishes the inequality that the Pope speaks about, and this is a topic that has been consistent. That is something which we hear about even today. And this passage was written at the end of 19th century. So it's more than 100 years since the passage was written, and we still talk about the ill effects of inequality. So the Pope says that one, we notice that the condition of the labor class is poor because of the unchecked greed of those who own corporations, who own enterprises, and the competition between those enterprises. He also speaks about the lending at high interest rates, usury, that has been condemned by the church, but a practice that continues unabated. And finally, he speaks about the concentration of wealth in the hands of a few. So he presents this kind of critique of the economic system as it exists. To remedy these wrongs, the socialists working on the poor man's envy of the rich are striving to do away with private property and contend that individual possession should become the common property of all, to be administered by the state or by municipal bodies. They hold that by thus transferring property from private individuals to the community, the present mischievous state of things will be set to rights, inasmuch as each citizen will then get his fair share of whatever there is to enjoy. But their contentions are so clearly powerless to end the controversy that were they carried into effect, the working man himself would be among the first to suffer. They are moreover emphatically unjust, for they would rob the lawful possessor, distort the functions of the state, and create utter confusion in the community. So in this paragraph, the Pope considers a solution that has been offered to the problems that he brought up in the first paragraph, right? So one remedy that is suggested is a socialist system in which private property would be taken over by the state and redistributed, right? And the Pope is against that idea. He says that there are problems, there are issues that we need to resolve, but a socialist system is not the way to go about it. The man, the labor class, the working man in whose name these reforms or these practices are invoked is likely to suffer under this system. And the system itself is unjust because it would snatch property from the hands of its lawful possessor. It would distort the functions of the state. The state is not supposed to snatch property from private possessors and redistribute it, and it would create confusion in the community. So he considers a remedy and then he discards it. It is surely undeniable that when a man engages in remunerative labor, the impelling reason and motive of his work is to obtain property and thereafter to hold it as his very own. If one man hires out to another his strength or skill, he does so for the purpose of receiving in return what is necessary for the satisfaction of his needs. He therefore expressly intends to acquire a right, full and real, not only to the remuneration, but also to the disposal of such remuneration, just as he pleases. Thus, if he lives sparingly, saves money, and for greater security invests his savings in land, the land in such a case is only his wages under another form. And consequently, a working man's little estate thus purchased should be as completely at his full disposal as are the wages he receives for his labor. But it is precisely in such power of disposal that ownership obtains, whether the property consists of land or chattels. Socialists, therefore, by endeavoring to transfer the possession of individuals to the community at large, strike at the interests of every wage earner, since they would deprive him of the liberty of disposing of his wages and thereby of all hope and possibility of increasing his resources and of bettering his condition in life. Okay, so here he builds on the critique that he introduced in the second paragraph. The Pope builds on that and says that he kind of, undermines this idea that socialism will only negatively affect the rich, right? He undermines that idea by speaking of socialism as a system that is quite perverse at its core, because in socialism, the idea of taking over the private property of an individual and to make it the possession of the community goes against the interests of not just a particular class of people like the rich, but it goes against the very idea of human nature, of why a person works, of why a person does labor. That is because the person wants to earn something and invest that something into a possession. That possession could be chattel, it could be land, it could be just cash that he wants to keep with himself. So even the poorest of men wants to use his earnings, whatever meager those earnings, however meager those earnings may be, for his own use. And when the state deprives men of that right, then it creates an unjust system that affects everyone, not just the rich. What is of far greater moment, however, is the fact that the remedy they propose is manifestly against justice. For every man has by nature the right to possess property as his own. This is one of the chief points of distinction between man and the animal creation, for the brute has no power of self-direction. It is the mind or reason which is the predominant element in us who are human creatures. It is this which renders a human being human and distinguishes him essentially from the brute. And on this very account, that man alone among the animal creation is endowed with reason, it must be within his right to possess things not merely for temporary and momentary use, as other living things do, but to have and to hold them in stable and permanent possession. He must have not only things that perish in the use, but those also which, though they have been reduced into use, continue for further use in after time. So this kind of concludes the critique of socialism that the Pope presented in the previous two paragraphs by saying that because he explains in the previous paragraph that socialist principles are against human nature. They don't have to do with attacking the rich. They are against human nature and they are harmful to everyone, even the poor, the labor, the working class. He says that, and this is because we are human beings and we have self-directed goals. We have self-directed goals where we wish to build something for the future. We wish to build things that are not consumed in the moment, but are useful even into the future, such as land or domestic animals or whatever it could be. And because that is something that is unique to humans and unique to uh, um, you know something that is unique to humans and makes us different from animals, it is something that we should when a system is proposed, an economic system is proposed, a system we should propose a system that agrees with this essential human nature, this this freedom of self-direction, this ability of self-direction. Okay, so let's get to the questions. Based on the passage, Leo XIII would be most likely to agree that the economic conditions of his era attest to which basic relationship? Modification to the laws regulating the economy heightened tensions between employers and workers. Social inequality worsens as the economy increasingly comes under the control of a select group of business people. Competition between businesses in a particular sector of the economy influences the morale of the workers in that sector. Measures meant to protect workers from economic exploitation have the unintended effect of encouraging such exploitation. So here, I think the answer is B, because this is something that he categorically states here, these lines. To this must be added that the hiring of labor and the conduct of trade are concentrated in the hands of comparatively few, so that a small number of very rich men have been able to lay upon the teeming masses of the laboring poor a yoke little better than that of slavery. So social inequality has been caused and worsened by the concentration of wealth in the hands of a few. Okay, I don't think he speaks about modifications to the laws regulating the economy or measures meant to protect workers backfiring, right? He does speak about competition between businesses in general and how increased competition worsens the quality of life for workers, but that is not about a particular sector or the morale of the workers. I think he speaks about competition in general, right? So C is not a good answer. And the next question, which is evidence, is from lines 8 to 14, right? 8 to 14 is when he speaks about social inequality being caused by the concentration of wealth. As used in line 19, common most nearly means this common, right? Individual possession should become the common property of all, right? So this is the socialist idea that individual possessions should become the common property. So that's the shared property of all, right? Communal property shared by everyone, right? So A is the best answer. It's not about inferior. We're not talking about the quality of the property. It's not typical and it's not frequent. According to Leo XIII, the desire to acquire property prompts individuals to feel envious of others' possessions, seek work from an employer, view work as more dignified than they otherwise would, resist sources of short-lived gratification. So I think it's B, right? Because this is where he talks about the desire to earn property. It is surely undeniable that when a man engages in remunerative labor, the impelling reason and motive of his work is to obtain property. So he engages in remunerative labor, that is, he seeks work from an employer. So that's B. The envy part, I think, was here somewhere, but that was not relevant to this. Therefore, if one man hires out, okay. Where was the envy? Yeah, but I don't think it was relevant here. So A is not relevant here. It's not about the dignity of work, and we're not talking about short-lived gratification in this context. In line 45, the phrase little estate most directly refers to the a working man's little estate thus purchased should be completely at his full disposal. So little estate would be basically whatever the working man invests his wages in, right? They are his wages and they are wages in another form. So whatever investment he makes, land or other property owned by a wage earner, status of a wage earner within the community, neighborhoods where wage earners typically live, standard amount of pay that a wage earner receives. So it's A, right? Whatever investments the wage earner has made is the little estate. It can reasonably be inferred from the passage that Leo XIII views socialism as being threatening because it discourages disempowered groups from seeking greater recognition in society, contributes to widespread discontent over the pace of societal change, decreases the individual's willingness to make sacrifices benefiting society as a whole, endangers certain conventions and institutions that are indispensable to society. So it's D, right? Because if you look at how socialism is defined here, mm, socialists, yeah, socialists, therefore, by endeavoring to transfer the possessions of individuals to the community at large, strike at the interests of every wage earner, since they would deprive him of the liberty of disposing of his wages and thereby of all hope and possibility of increasing his resources and of bettering his condition in life. Right? So, the idea that socialism looks at redistribution as a solution strikes at the very roots of how a society works and why people labor, right? So it endangers those conventions and institutions that are indispensable to society. It Socialism doesn't discourage disempowered groups from seeking greater recognition. It's not about widespread discontent over the pace of change. That's not what the Pope says. And the individual's willingness to make sacrifices. That is also not something that is brought up. So the best answer in this context is option D. Question 17. According to Leo XIII, what is one essential aspect of the concept of private property? The ease with which land holdings can be exchanged for other forms of property, the belief that people can amass a great deal of property through living frugally, the freedom of property holders to determine what to do with their property, the likelihood that those who purchase property will profit from its resale. So it's C, right? Because, one second. Yeah. It is C because we know that in this paragraph, the Pope is very categorical about the freedom to do what one wants with the property, the power of disposal that ownership obtains, right? And that power of disposal should remain with the owner of the property and should not be transferred to the state. So the freedom of property holders to do what they want with their property. It's not about the ease with which land holdings can be exchanged for other forms. Amassing a great deal of property through living frugally, that's not an essential concept of private property. And profit from resale is not it either. Leo XIII implies that those who wish to abolish the ownership of private property fail to recognize that such ownership is beneficial in that it promotes a single set of values among the wealthy and the working class alike, provides members of the working class a means to improve their circumstances, induces workers to feel content with the compensation they receive for their labor, helps to ensure that the various social classes live in harmony with one another. So I think it's B, right? It provides members a way to improve their circumstances. And this, I think, comes here. In fact, these lines, right? Socialists, by endeavoring to transfer the possession of individuals to the community at large, strike at the interests of every wage earner and thereby of all hope and possibility of increasing his resources and of bettering his condition in life. So lines 50 to 56. Okay, I just wanted to look at 16th again. I just wanted to make sure that we have chosen the so I think this was the correct evidence for question 16, right? When we talked about how they are, what conventions and institutions do they endanger? They endanger these conventions and institutions, right? They distort the functions of the state and create utter confusion in the community. Okay. Number 20, in the last paragraph, the discussion of animal creation serves mainly to assert a central difference between humans and animals, underscore humans' responsibilities towards animals, consider humans' right to keep animals as property, draw attention to the basic needs of humans and animals. So it's A, right? The central difference between humans and animals, the Pope says, is this self-directed goal setting that humans are capable of. And that is something which is deprived if a socialist system is introduced. Okay, let's grade our answers. Question 11 onwards. Yeah. So question 11 to 20. 1 second. BCABA, BCABA, 16 DCBDA, DCBDA. Okay, so we got all correct. This was the history passage of the May 2021 US SAT. Hope this exercise was useful. Do check out solutions to the literature passage, which I've already uploaded. And I'll be uploading solutions to the next 3 passages soon. So come back later for those. Take care. Bye-bye.